While the Iraqi and Syrian people bear the brunt of the empire's military destruction, justified by countering Iranian influence, the Iranian people are suffering casualties from a different kind of war. The 800 or so sanctions Trump imposed on Iran were already killing civilians from lack of medical supplies, and set the stage for the devastation they're now experiencing from the outbreak of COVID-19. Iran is the hardest hit country in the Middle East, surpassing 2,600 deaths as of March 29, with one person dying every 10 minutes. These crippling sanctions are causing an unquantifiable amount of unnecessary suffering and death. But the Trump administration has defied all pleas from the international community and even from Congress to ease them. Unthinkably, the U.S. is adding even more.
We are announcing new sanctions on the regime. It's a kleptocracy. It's this Marxist, theocratic kleptocracy.
On March 26, the U.S. imposed new sanctions that punish politicians who support removing U.S. troops from Iraq, restrict the sale of Iranian oil, and even attack a charity that maintains holy sites. This scenario is exactly what sanctions are for. It's a dream come true for the imperialists. See, this is what you get when you don't play by our rules. They can blame the government for ineptitude, building a case for regime change on top of a growing pile of bodies. As Pompeo declared, the Wuhan virus is a killer, and the Iranian regime is an accomplice. Murderous sanctions are not the only act of aggression by the U.S. empire in Iran. On March 13, 2 additional aircraft carriers were sent to patrol the Arabian Sea, the first time this has happened since 2012. The new naval mobilization expressly threatens military strikes on Iran. And on March 23rd, the U.S. and United Arab Emirates publicized a full-scale mock invasion of Iran, actually constructing a fictional Iranian city for troops to conquer and destroy. The message of these operations is quite clear. While your nation is suffering and dying, we are taking another step towards war. In Venezuela, even bolder moves for regime change by the Trump admin. The democratically elected Maduro government has arguably taken the most pro-working class approach to the pandemic, with a 6-month rent freeze and outlawing layoffs. But in the face of U.S. sanctions, they are still in crisis. Before the pandemic, U.S. sanctions on food and medicine had directly killed over 40,000 Venezuelans, according to the Center for Economic and Policy Research. So on March 13, right after Venezuela got its first confirmed case of the coronavirus, the U.S. imposed even more. These sanctions target the country's oil exports, the source of almost all of its income. In desperate need of help, Venezuela went to the IMF on March 18 for an emergency loan to prepare for what was on the horizon. The U.S. made sure it was blocked, and the loan was denied. But maximizing physical and economic death in the nation wasn't enough for the U.S. empire. So on March 26, Washington took their biggest move for regime change since the failed U.S. coup attempt in January 2019. In essence, they placed a kidnapping bounty on the head of Maduro, offering $15 million for his arrest, with $10 million bounties on other top officials. This provides even more incentive for U.S.-funded opposition forces to fulfill the dream of a coup from within. Ironically, the real narco states are the closest U.S. allies, like the governments of Colombia and Honduras.
Nicolas Maduro must go. We must get this democracy started. We have now introduced this pathway to achieve that. We've made clear all along that Nicolas Maduro will never again govern Venezuela.
On March 31st, they published a transition plan where the U.S. promised to lift all sanctions on Venezuela if the socialists leave office. To escalate the threat, Trump announced on April 1st he was doubling the amount of warships, aircraft, and special forces troops off Venezuela's coast. While the Pentagon is using this pandemic opportunity to beef up occupation forces throughout Latin America, those directed at Venezuela are a dangerous step towards war.
I would like to begin by announcing some important developments in our war against the Chinese virus. The impact of the Chinese virus on our nation's students. The Chinese virus. The Chinese virus. I talk about the Chinese virus, and I mean it.
Why do you keep calling this the Chinese virus? A lot of people say it's racist.
It's not racist at all, no, not at all. It comes from China. That's why.
China, the country the U.S. foreign policy establishment has declared the enemy and perpetrator of the deadly virus, has it mostly contained, and is now in the process of aiding other inflicted countries with supplies of desperately needed medical equipment, including millions of masks and thousands of ventilators and protective suits. In a time of much-needed cooperation between the two countries, anti-China hawks are seizing the opportunity to push hardline policy against China, as well as anti-Chinese racism, key to war propaganda. Politicians like Tom Cotton are making the media rounds to assert COVID-19 is an engineered Chinese bioweapon. This unfounded conspiracy isn't just the ranting and raving from a lone senator. It seems to be a coordinated attempt on behalf of the same warmongering neocons that advocated the invasion of Iraq. Now, with the same premise, to confront China, allow international inspectors into your labs to disprove the claim. Furthermore, Matthew Pottinger, Trump's main architect of policy on China, is one of many turning up the economic war, advocating to sever ties, which will put even more strain on the medical supply chain into the U.S. It's not just war-hungry neocons, though. Corporate media outlets across the political spectrum continuously delegitimize China's aid delivery as propaganda efforts by the communist regime to, quote, curry favor with our allies. This all translates into much more. As the virus takes over, the U.S. is conducting mock battles with the Chinese Navy in the region as a threat. Just last week, the Navy launched live-fire missiles in the Philippine Sea. And throughout March, it's conducted regular military exercises in the South China Sea, something China has called a hegemonic act that violates international law and threatens peace and stability. The Pentagon sees open war with China as inevitable, not because it poses any threat to us, but because it poses a threat to capitalist profits. So this pandemic is being used as a golden opportunity to fast-track this new Cold War. Even U.S. allies are being put on notice as they struggle with the outbreak. Cuba's world-renowned doctors and their effective virus treatment are being requested by dozens of governments in desperate need of help. But the State Department has issued an official warning to not allow this aid that would no doubt save lives, simply because it would legitimize a government the U.S. is hell-bent on overthrowing. Taking advantage of the pandemic to further demonize Cuba and claim all their international solidarity as just a front for communist dictatorship is unconscionable regime change propaganda with deadly consequences. So far, at least 53 countries have joined the call for an international ceasefire so the world can band together to fight a common enemy, COVID-19. At a time where global cooperation has never been more urgent, countries are stepping up to show true international solidarity. But the U.S. empire has brazenly shown it will only weaponize the crisis, making disregard for life its official policy. Here at home, Americans anticipate the worst, left to suffer and die by their leaders in a corporate sacrifice zone. Rich politicians love to say that we're all in this together, but it's clear we are not. It's just those of us who were screwed by the corporate bailout and those abroad living under U.S. domination who are all truly in this together. One thing is for sure, there's no going back from this moment. This crisis exposes the true nature of our imperialist system. But that also means that together, we can turn our collective hopelessness into collective radicalization.